I was genuinely surprised in the comments section after making the video about to voice or not to voice, that is the question with regards to CRPGs, that there was quite a lot of discussion about AI. Now, I'm not one to shy away from controversial topics if I consider it necessary to discuss such topics, so I thought it might be appropriate in light of that to just make a broad video about AI in video games and specifically CRPGs. But at the outset, I need to get some things out of the way that are not directly related to video games or CRPGs for that matter, concerning AI. Now, everyone and his cousin has an opinion on AI, obviously, and I'm no exception. Opinions are like buttholes, and I have one too. And it's pretty simple to me. I'm a ruthless pragmatist when it comes to basically anything at the end of the day. Things are what they are. Now, I understand, especially in the video game context, and specifically with respect to voice actors, because that was the major context that these comments were brought up in, that it is a very sensitive topic, and I totally get that for very understandable reasons. There is the fear that human voice actors, for example, could be replaced by AI voices and what have you. And I get that, and I'm somewhat sympathetic. But I need to point out a few things at the outset. I need to point out, for example, that these self-same people that are very, very anti-AI, that are terrified either of losing their jobs, or the people that are sort of in virtue signaling fashion concerned for the voice actors who could lose their jobs, they think AI is bad, and they think AI is a betrayal of the human spirit, and they think AI is this and that. All it is self-interest, really, at the end of the day. Because I can tell you, and I remember quite clearly, but a few years ago, when there were concerns, which turned out not to be true as yet, around blue-collar work, truck drivers, this sort of thing, about their jobs being replaced by, say, self-driving cars and what have you, the retorts and replies you could read all over the place online were to the effect of learn to code, i.e., we don't give a damn if you lose your job to AI/automation, but we're deeply concerned about ours. So I get the concern, it's self-interest, it's self-preservation, but you'll forgive me if I'm not as sympathetic as I'm supposed to be, because I was sympathetic for the people back then as well. I'm sympathetic to anyone that is threatened by the possibility of being replaced by AI. But we need to remain realists at the end of the day, and AI is coming whether we like it or not. It is here, in fact. And there's no point in being a Luddite and saying we reject it because it's too late. If you reject it, you'll drown in the coming storm and coming flood. It's just that simple. And there's another point to be made here before we talk about the actual application of AI within the context of games. And that is that at the end of the day, people don't give a bloody damn. Now, you think I am kidding, but I'm not. Go to any YouTube video out there about any subject you might consider interesting. Comic books, nature, so-called history documentaries, you name it, tons and tons of topics out there. And it is frequently voiced by an AI bot, and not even a good one. Sometimes it's terrible, sometimes it's better, sometimes it's pretty good. But the point to be driven home here is that people don't care. People like their content, and they are very willing to consume what is considered AI slop. And at the end of the day, human beings are creatures and animals of habit, so we get used to things in time, and such things simply become normalized for us. This is true of every piece of technology you can imagine. 40 or 50 years ago, what we're doing now, me uploading a video and you commenting in a comment section, would have been bizarre, science fiction even. But it's perfectly normal now. And so too will it come to pass with AI. When? We do not know. But it will come to pass in just such a fashion. And even though I can personally understand it and even lament certain things, for example, I was a big fan of the guy I consider to be the voice of Batman, Kevin Conroy, who was really the iconic voice for Batman for the ages. Now, what happens in a couple of decades, if I'm still alive, for example, where his voice is synthesized into an AI and they just reapply it? I might be concerned about that. I might be bothered by that because his quote-unquote spirit is no longer in the voice. But the Zoomers, the alphas, they're not going to care. They're not going to even notice the difference. So, the final concluding statement on this section of the video is it won't matter long term either way. You got to sometimes go with the flow. It is what it is. And if we come to the gaming space, I don't think human beings are all that different in the context of gaming, to be perfectly blunt. I think, much as with any other form of entertainment, games operate in a similar fashion. Gamers, that is, we, want to enjoy products that are entertaining, distracting, interesting, fun, etc., etc. If a game accomplishes these goals within the context of having used AI, I don't think much of us will care very much. Because at the end of the day, we are consumers. We are consumers of products that are called games. And of course, there's more to games than just being a product. It's a form of art. People work on them. They're real human beings. They have livelihoods and this and that. It's true, and we should be aware of that. However, they are products at the end of the day, and we're being sold these products. And if somebody can pull off an AI voice that's really good for a character, and the character becomes much beloved in due course, I mean, what can you do? Nothing. It is what it is. You're still going to enjoy the character. You're still going to enjoy the other entries in the game, right? Even if they happen to be AI. And this is where it really comes into play at the end of the day. I think in a world where voice acting actually is quite expensive, by the way, I have talked to people on occasion who might know a little bit more about it than you or I, and it is quite expensive. For the little guy, indie developers, AI as a technology to voice things, and even to help create art. That's another one that people are very, very sensitive about. The spirit of the human being in art and what have you. Fair enough. But for the little guy, AI could become an invaluable tool to create large-scale products that otherwise would have been impossible to make due to being completely cost prohibitive. This is just a fact of reality. And even now, to varying degrees, bigger companies and developers make use of AI tools. We know for a fact, for example, that even Larian makes use of some degree of AI. Sven Finke, in an interview, talked about it for the purposes of streamlining repetitive processes that would otherwise take forever, be really boring, not interesting, etc., busy work. And then you might say, well, Spell, that's different. I guess it kind of is, in as much as there's not a lot of human emotion invested in boring, repetitive coding / busy work, but there is in, say, voices and art. I totally get that aspect of things. But if we want indie developers to have some chance within this market of making it and of making an impression, I think AI tools could become invaluable. Now, I'm no expert on AI by any means. I've read a bit here and there like anyone else. And so it could be quite a while before these tools become efficient enough such that they become sufficient to even make games with on a large scale. And by that, I mean actually voicing characters and actually creating art. The art has improved steadily over the years, and some of it actually looks quite good. With each passing year, these things get better. And I think ultimately, and this is what Sven Finke said, in not so many words, to be honest, he was a lot more, how should I put it, nice about it than I would be. But it's kind of a question of adapt or die, right? Everyone is going to start making use of AI tools for creating games at some point in the not too distant future. And it won't just be indie developers, even though I think those are the people who will be able to benefit from AI tools the most. No, it's going to be the big publishers as well. And so that's what's going to happen. And guess what? If the AI tools are up to scratch, if they're good enough, people won't care. People will only care if you get something akin to the uncanny valley, which is usually applied to faces, we'll talk about in the context of voices, right? A voice that sounds pretty good, and there's something off with it, such that you can detect the offness of the voice, as it were. In that case, you might be bothered by it to varying degrees. Same with the art, right? Back in the day, about 3 years ago, when you looked at AI art, you could always tell it was AI, especially when it came to human beings. Why? Because the hands looked really freaking weird, and they had 7 fingers sometimes, or maybe just 3, or sometimes 15. The hands looked weird. And now it's a lot better, to be perfectly honest. So I don't know what's going to happen exactly, but I don't think we can sort of wish away AI. And again, I don't think we can afford to be uniquely invested in one branch of human existence, such as, voice actors and maybe artists, and not be concerned about other people. That's just virtue signaling, and it's BS. Anyway, I don't have much else to say about this other than I really do hope that AI becomes a useful tool for everyone, especially indie developers, because imagine what talented creative human beings could make, even if they don't have a lot of money, and I'm sure there are a lot of those guys out there, once they have the tools to make those visions that they have and creative power come true. And I'm looking forward to these creations, to be perfectly honest, as I'm sure many of you are as well. I was genuinely surprised by the positive interpretation and perspective on AI use, because generally speaking, I too think it probably will be a net benefit, at least for the making of games. Whatever else might fall by the wayside, as we don't ultimately know what's going to happen. But anyway, as always, thank you for tuning in, and if you like my content and you like my takes, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. It is much appreciated, as it really helps out the channel, and I'll check you out next time.